Xmen Vs Street Fighter!
Hello and welcome to another Boroshin's Retrospectives, today on an absolutely fantastic game. Xmen Vs Street Fighter, released in 1996 on the Capcom Play System 2 arcade hardware. And this is, in my, personally, my favourite Marvel game. Like Marvel Vs Capcom game. This is the first actual crossover Marvel Vs Capcom game they did before this. X-Men Children of the Atom, as well as Marvel Superheroes, which are both fantastic games. But this is the first time the Capcom characters and the Marvel characters fought it out. This game is a joy to play. It's unbalanced, it's mental. The character, for instance, I'm playing Sabretooth and Juggernaut. Sabretooth is literally one of the most brain-dead characters I have ever seen in a fighting game. But it's brain-dead in just the most stupid way. You can basically press jump, heavy punch, heavy kick all day long, and most characters don't really have a way of dealing with it. But there's a legitimate fun to this game. This game is just very satisfying to play. Everything feels good, feels very responsive, feels very snappy. Now to get into the just the game, it gives, or it provides basically the backbone of what you would now see in the current, or maybe in Marvel Vs Capcom Infinite later this year, as it's going back to the 2v2 standpoint with no assists, which is exactly the same as this game. This game doesn't have assists, so it's not like Marvel 2, Marvel 3, Marvel 1, or Marvel Superheroes vs Street Fighter, which all have assists. This game simply has a tagging system. It does have a variable counter, which is when you're blocking, you can spend a bar to tag in your partner and basically do a sort of like an alpha counter or V reversal in Street Fighter 5. The game sounds great. I love the soundtrack. The soundtrack is it's got great remixes of the classic Street Fighter themes, really good remixes, and then they just I feel the Capcom sound team knocked it out of the park with the themes for the Marvel characters. I mean, some of them they had already done. Obviously, a lot of the most of the sprites in the game are reused. The Street Fighter characters, mainly from Alpha, apart from Cammy. This is actually the first time that Alpha Cammy sprite. Everyone's like, "Oh, that's Alpha Cammy." Well, actually, this is before she's in any Alpha game. She got added in Alpha 2 Gold, but that was released after this game. So that sprite was actually made for this game. And then you had a couple of new sprites for this game, like Sabretooth, Gambit, and I don't think anyone else? Rogue. Yes, Rogue. Rogue wasn't in X-Men Children of the Atom. So you had like 3 completely new characters who hadn't been in anything else. Everyone else was sort of from X-Men Children of the Atom, sprite-wise, or from Street Fighter Alpha. They just pulled it out of the park with the sound. I feel all of the themes are very memorable, very catchy. Certainly if you're in the arcade, you'd want to be listening to the soundtrack. The stages are very vibrant, very colourful. However, I feel they improved the stages in Marvel Superheroes vs Street Fighter, which came out in '97, because these stages don't really have much relevance, I feel, to X-Men or Street Fighter. There wasn't really much. They were sort of just battlegrounds in which they can fight in, whereas they improved it in X-Men vs. Not X-Men vs Street Fighter, I apologise. Marvel Superheroes vs Street Fighter, where they actually added in a lot of background characters who are relevant to each other's series. I think in one of the backgrounds, I'm not sure whether it was, I don't think I actually played on the background in this particular arcade run, but in one of the backgrounds in X-Men vs Street Fighter, I believe Blanca is in the background. That's one of the few times in this game where there's a relevant character from another series, but I know they improved on it in Marvel Superheroes vs Street Fighter because you had Blanka and Beast from X-Men sitting next to each other. So it made the backgrounds felt a bit more inclusive in that game. So that's something I'd definitely say they improved upon in the later games. However, they I wouldn't say messed up, but Marvel Superheroes vs Street Fighter feels like a sort of toned down version of this game in terms of gameplay. There's a lot more crazy stuff you can do in this game than you can in Marvel. It's still a broken game, Marvel Superheroes vs Street Fighter, but this game has absolute crazy stuff you can do. I mean, I tried numerous times to do. I'm terrible at this game. I like playing it. But with Sabretooth, you can do launcher into, I believe it's. I mean, I kept messing it up in this video, but light punch, light kick, medium punch, medium kick, and then that puts them at the perfect height for you to like tick throw them in the air. And you tick throw them, and then you get a massive bounce. And throws do an extortionate amount of damage in this game. They do a ridiculous amount of damage. And off of that, you get a super, and supers do, as you saw in just there, do a incredible amount of damage. So the game, it's just all out of whack. You've got this crazy amount of damage. But the game's fun. Like, even though like every character in this game has an infinite, basically. There's very few characters that don't. I think M.Bison doesn't, but M.Bison is one of the few characters that genuinely sucks in this game. He really does suck. But every character, like Juggernaut has an infinite. Zangief has the easiest infinite in the world, which is Jump, Light, Punch, Lariat, or Air Lariat, because you can do Lariat in the air. That's the easiest infinite ever. I pulled it off on like the third try when I was playing. I was like, oh, see what you just do into Jump, Light, Punch, Lariat on an air opponent, and that's as easy as it gets. Once you hit it, if you're on point, you're not dropping it. Although like Gambit has infinites, pretty much every character in this game has an infinite. But yeah, this is a great example of a game that's unbalanced, but it's incredibly fun. Like there's something about it that even though you would get probably if at the time if someone pulled off an infinite on you, you would have thought, oh man, that's mad cheap, because that's basically, if you're in the arcade culture, you're basically being robbed of money. You pay to play, and this person infinites you, and then you've got to go back to the back of the line. You would have been a bit pissed off, but at the same time you would have been amazed at how cool a thing that was. And obviously at the time, this game was incredible. The idea of I mean, the X-Men were huge in the mid-90s. They were huge. The cartoon was in full swing, which I love. I love the cartoon, even as someone who was born in 1997. I watched the cartoon repeats in the mid-2000s, and I loved it. I loved the X-Men cartoon, and it's one of the reasons why I would describe myself more as a Marvel fan than a DC fan in terms of like comic books, because I guess I've just had more exposure to their characters in my childhood, so I just like them more. But yeah, back in '96, having them combine Street Fighter, obviously still in pretty much full swing in terms of its popularity, maybe slightly falling off, but it's still a very big property. If you're a fighting game player, this would have been mental. Like, wait, you walk into an arcade and there's Xmen versus Street Fighter. You can have Ryu with Cyclops. Like, that's a very weird idea. Obviously, a bit taken for granted now, where you have all of these sort of crossover things like Akuma's in Tekken, and even that is kind of mental. But this was one of the games that actually started this whole crossover spree, and inspired countless other games that happened later down the line, like CVS, even the SNK version of that, as well as eventually things like the much less successful, but in quite a fun game in its own right, Mortal Kombat vs DC Universe, which wasn't so good due to certain restrictions on how violent they could be, considering Mortal Kombat is well known for its violence. Here we have the penultimate boss fight with Apocalypse, which, to be honest, I would say is another sort of con of the game, in the sense that it's so easy. Like, I've never lost to Apocalypse, ever. And I mean, I like Apocalypse, I mean, this is cool, this massive sprite of Apocalypse. And that's another thing that the game is just fantastic in. I mean, Capcom's sprite work is well renowned as being top quality. Like, seriously, they know how to make a game look good. Or they did. I mean, I would still say, like, something like Street Fighter 5 looks good, although they could do with a bit of physics overhaul in terms of, like, hair. But yeah, the game looks fantastic, and like Apocalypse is just even though he's super easy to beat, it's still a cool boss fight nonetheless. What I would say that this game basically inspired a completely different type of fighting game, because it created a much more fast-paced fighting game. Like, it has a lot of what anime games would go to use. Like, for instance, many of the characters like that have flying mechanics, like Magneto and Storm, who are staples now of the Marvel Vs Capcom series, have air dashes. That's something that I'm sure someone like Daisuke, who does, or the head developer or producer of Guilty Gear, I'm sure when he was creating Guilty Gear in early 2000, this was a game that he probably remembered playing and was like, well, I'm going to have air dashes. Because this is one of the early games to have air dashes in it. I mean, this is also, those were apparent in the earlier Marvel titles made by Capcom, of which I found out recently that actually Capcom made some sort of side-scrolling X-Men games earlier on, which before X-Men Children of the Atom, which is kind of cool. But yeah, this game inspired a lot of mechanics that both obviously influenced the future Marvel vs. Capcom titles, as well as other fighting games that now are seen as separate because they're so different to Street Fighter. And I think this game should be remembered. I mean, definitely, if you're on PC, and you don't need a powerful PC, get this on Fightcade. Plenty of people still play it, and it's blast to play. And it would be actually, to be honest, I would say it's the best game to practice if you're preparing for Marvel Infinite, because it's technically the one that's going to be most similar, as far as we know at this moment. But yeah, seriously, go play Xmen Vs Street Fighter. It's a hell of fun. All of the characters are fun to play, even Bison, who's not very good. But it's a fun game. It's got the cheesy old Capcom ending. But yeah, hope you've enjoyed watching this Boroshin's retrospective on a game that I just really like. Next time I might do a game that I don't so like. Maybe I'll go back to, I did say I was going to do Real Fatal Fury, but I didn't want to do them next to each other because I thought that'd be a bit cheap. Be doing too many SNK games. And I hope you stop by next time for another look at a classic fighting game. I'll see you next time.